A woman in a wheelchair was hired by a millionaire to be the new maid, but everyone laughed at her. After earning the millionaire's trust, she faced saboteurs and ultimately proved herself stronger than them all. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from, and stay tuned. The gates of Lunar Estate parted reluctantly under the city's sun, as if skeptical of the modest adapted sedan that approached. Emma Muller adjusted her rear-view mirror, catching a glimpse of her determined expression before driving through. At 32, with chestnut hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and eyes that held more wisdom than her years suggested, she knew that look well. It was the same one she'd worn during every defining moment of her life. This sprawling mansion, nestled in the hills of Malibu, represented another mountain to climb, another place where her wheelchair would be seen before she was. The immaculate driveway curved toward a house that seemed to touch the sky, its modern architecture a stark contrast against the natural landscape. As Emma parked and began the practiced routine of assembling her wheelchair, she noticed curtains shifting in one of the windows. Someone was already watching, already judging. "Ms. Muller," a voice called out as she maneuvered onto the cobblestone path. The estate manager, Hugo Wells, approached with a clipboard and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Tall and imposing in his tailored suit, he looked exactly as Emma had expected, efficient, cold, and clearly uncomfortable with her presence. "Yes, that's me," Emma replied, extending her hand. "Thank you for meeting me." Hugo's handshake was brief, dismissive. "Mr. Blake insisted we try this arrangement. Follow me, please." The pause before arrangement said everything his professional demeanor attempted to hide. Emma followed him through massive double doors into a foyer that could have housed her entire apartment. The interior was a study in minimalism, sleek furniture, abstract art, and not a speck of dust to be found. It felt more like a museum than a home. "The staff quarters are this way," Hugo said, not bothering to slow his pace. "Though I'm not entirely clear on how you'll manage your duties." Emma quickened her movements to keep up. "I assure you, Mr. Wells, I'm fully capable of performing the work I was hired for." "We'll see," he responded, his tone making it clear he expected her to fail. "Mr. Blake has peculiar ideas sometimes. I give this experiment a week, maybe two." As they turned a corner, they nearly collided with a young woman carrying a stack of linens. She jumped back, her eyes widening at the sight of Emma. "This is Olivia, one of our housekeepers," Hugo introduced. "Olivia, this is Ms. Muller, the snooty personal assistant to Mr. Blake." "Nice to meet you," Emma offered warmly. Olivia's response was a quick nod before she hurried away, but not before Emma caught the whispered remark to another staff member passing by. "Is that the charity case?" Emma had heard worse, much worse. She kept her expression neutral as Hugo continued the tour, pointing out rooms she would need to know, explaining protocols and schedules with the clear subtext that he didn't expect her to remember any of it. Mr. Blake rises at precisely 6 a.m. His coffee must be prepared exactly as specified in this manual. His schedule is maintained with absolute precision. There is no room for errors or excuses, Hugo lectured, handing her a thick binder, and there is absolutely no personal conversation unless initiated by Mr. Blake himself. Emma accepted the manual with a polite smile. "I understand the importance of professionalism, Mr. Wells." "It's more than professionalism, Ms. Muller, it's perfection. Something I doubt you're familiar with given your limitations." The comment stung, but Emma had developed thick skin years ago. "I find that limitations often exist primarily in people's perceptions, Mr. Wells, rather than reality." Before Hugo could respond, a door at the end of the hallway opened and a tall figure emerged. Even at a distance, there was no mistaking the commanding presence of Alexander Blake. His reputation as one of the most successful tech entrepreneurs in America preceded him, founder of Blake Tech Industries, philanthropist when the cameras were rolling, and notoriously demanding employer when they weren't. "Hugo, is this our new PA?" Alexander's voice carried down the corridor, deep and authoritative. "Yes, sir. This is Emma Muller." Alexander approached them with measured steps, Up close, he was even more intimidating, over 6 feet tall, with sharp features and penetrating grey eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they landed on. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his custom suit impeccable. At 44, he carried the confidence of a man who had conquered the world and expected it to stay conquered. "Ms. Moller." He extended his hand, his gaze moving from her face to her wheelchair and back again, his expression unreadable. "Welcome to Luna Estate." "Thank you, Mr. Blake. I appreciate the opportunity." He studied her for a moment longer than was comfortable. "Hugo likely informed you that I run a tight ship. Punctuality, efficiency, discretion, these aren't just preferences, they're requirements." "He made that very clear, sir." "Good." Alexander nodded. "You come highly recommended by Stanford's business school despite your unconventional background. Let's see if their assessment was accurate." Emma maintained eye contact, refusing to be diminished. "I look forward to exceeding your expectations, Mr. Blake." Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, perhaps, at her confidence. "We'll begin tomorrow, 5:30 a.m., my study. Hugo will show you to your quarters." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Emma with the distinct impression that she had just been dismissed as an afterthought, a curiosity that wouldn't last. Hugo's smirk confirmed her suspicion. "This way to your room, Ms. Mueller. I'd suggest you rest while you can. Tomorrow will be challenging." The room was practical, but isolated from the rest of the staff quarters, as if her presence was meant to be kept separate. A small modification had been made to the bathroom, a basic handrail installed hastily, the paint around it still wet. "Dinner is at 6 p.m. in the staff dining room," Hugo informed her. "Though perhaps you'd prefer to eat alone tonight." When he left, Emma finally allowed her shoulders to slump slightly. She moved to the window, looking out at the manicured gardens that stretched toward the Pacific Ocean. The view was breathtaking, but the beauty felt hollow, much like the mansion itself. She unpacked methodically, arranging her few possessions with care. Among them was a worn cookbook filled with handwritten notes and recipes, her most treasured possession. Each page represented a dream, the culmination of night classes and countless hours of practice. Someday she would have her own restaurant. This job, however demeaning it might prove to be, was just another step toward that goal. The staff dining room fell silent when Emma entered that evening. 8 faces turned to stare, their expressions ranging from curiosity to outright contempt. She recognized Olivia, who quickly looked away. "Well, well, the special hire has arrived," said a voice from the head of the table. A man in his late 30s with perfectly coiffed blonde hair and a perpetual sneer rose slightly. "I'm Carter Winters, Mr. Blake's Chief of Household Affairs. These are the rest of the staff you'll be attempting to work alongside." Emma positioned herself at the only available space, the far end of the table. "It's nice to meet all of T. I'm Emma Muller." "We know who you are," Carter replied, his tone making it clear that knowing was not the same as accepting. "Mr. Blake has quite the reputation for his charitable impulses, though they usually don't involve hiring the handicapped." The slur hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Emma kept her expression neutral as she served herself from the dishes on the table. "I assure you, Mr. Winters, there's nothing charitable about my employment here. I'm qualified for this position." Carter laughed, a sound entirely devoid of humor. "Qualified? To run alongside Alexander Blake's demanding schedule? To anticipate his needs before he even knows them? I think not. But don't worry, I'll be here to pick up the pieces when you inevitably fail." The meal continued in uncomfortable silence, broken only by whispered comments and occasional laughter at jokes Emma wasn't meant to hear. She ate efficiently, observing the dynamics around her. Carter clearly viewed her as a threat, though she couldn't imagine why. The others seemed content to follow his lead. Later, alone in her room, Emma opened her laptop and began studying the manual Hugo had given her. If perfection was what Alexander Blake demanded, perfection was what she would deliver. Not because she needed to prove anything to him or his judgmental staff, but because she had spent a lifetime proving things to herself. Outside her window, the California moon cast silver light across the mansion grounds. From this angle, Emma could see into Alexander's study, where he sat working late into the night, his solitary figure framed by floor-to-ceiling windows. Despite his wealth and power, there was something profoundly lonely about the image, a man surrounded by luxury, but separated from the world. Two broken people in one magnificent house, Emma murmured to herself, turning back to her preparations. This should be interesting. She had no idea just how interesting it would become. Emma was awake before her alarm, the unfamiliar bed and weight of expectations making sleep elusive. By 5:15 a.m. she was dressed in a crisp white blouse and tailored black pants, her hair neatly styled, and a leather portfolio on her lap as she navigated the dim hallways of Luna Estate. The mansion was eerily quiet, with only the faint hum of hidden technology breaking the silence. She arrived at Alexander's study at 5:25 a.m., determined to establish herself as someone who exceeded expectations rather than merely meeting them. The double doors were imposing but opened smoothly, revealing a vast room lined with books and dominated by a massive desk overlooking the ocean. Alexander was already there, his back to the door, as he gazed out at the pre-dawn waves. "You're early," he said without turning, his voice betraying no emotion. "I believe punctuality means arriving before you're expected, not precisely when you're expected," Emma replied, moving to position herself where he could see her without straining to look around. Alexander turned, his expression inscrutable. In the gentle glow of the desk lamp, she noticed details she'd missed yesterday, the faint lines around his eyes suggesting sleepless nights, a certain heaviness in his shoulders despite his perfect posture. An interesting philosophy. He gestured to a chair positioned near his desk. "Your first task is to review these contracts. Flag any inconsistencies, redundancies, or potential liabilities." He pushed a stack of documents toward her. "I have a conference call in an hour. By then, I expect your complete analysis." Emma accepted the challenge without flinching. "Of course, Mr. Blake." The contracts were for a potential acquisition, complex legal documents filled with technical jargon and deliberate obfuscation. Emma read quickly, her pen making precise notes in the margins. Years of academic rigor had trained her to identify patterns and discrepancies that others might miss. 50 minutes later, she placed the annotated documents on Alexander's desk. "I've identified 17 potential issues, Mr. Blake. The most concerning is on page 43, where the liability clause contradicts the terms established in Section 2B. Alexander raised an eyebrow, clearly not expecting such thoroughness. He skimmed her notes, his expression shifting from skepticism to something approaching respect. "Not bad, Ms. Mueller." He pressed an intercom button. "Hugo, bring in my coffee." Moments later, Hugo entered carrying a silver tray with a single cup of coffee. His eyes narrowed when he saw Emma, already working comfortably at Alexander's desk. "Your coffee, sir," Hugo said, placing the cup down with precision. "Thank you. Ms. Mueller, we'll need the Blake Tech financial projections for the next quarter and my calendar for the week." Hugo's jaw tightened. "Of course, sir, though perhaps I should assist with organizing the calendar given the complexity and physical demands of coordinating your schedule." Alexander's gaze hardened. "Ms. Mueller is perfectly capable of handling—" "My calendar, Hugo, that will be all." As Hugo left, his glare at Emma could have frozen flame. The morning proceeded in a blur of tasks, organizing meetings, drafting correspondence, and preparing briefs for Alexander's upcoming presentations. Emma worked methodically, anticipating needs before they were voiced and solving problems before they fully materialized. By noon, even Alexander seemed mildly impressed, though he expressed it only through the absence of criticism rather than actual praise. "You'll join me for a business lunch," he informed her. "The chef has prepared something in the dining room. We'll continue working through the meal." The main dining room was starkly beautiful, with a table that could seat 20, but was set for only 2. As they discussed business strategies, Emma noticed Alexander watching her with curious intensity whenever he thought she wasn't looking. "Your resume mentions culinary school," he said suddenly, interrupting their discussion about market projections. Emma was surprised by the personal question. Yes, I attend evening classes at the California Culinary Institute. It's a passion of mine. Yet you applied for an administrative position with a tech entrepreneur. The restaurant industry isn't known for its accessibility, Emma replied carefully. And your salary allows me to continue my education without financial strain. Alexander studied her. Pragmatic. Necessarily so, she countered. Their lunch was interrupted by Carter, who entered with calculated casualness. Mr. Blake, I've finalized the arrangements for the charity gala as we discussed. I've taken the liberty of coordinating with the event planners personally. Alexander frowned slightly. I don't recall discussing the gala arrangements with you. Carter. Carter's smile faltered. Perhaps not directly, sir, but Hugo mentioned you had concerns about the planning, so I naturally stepped in to assist. His gaze flicked to Emma. I assumed Ms. Muller would be overwhelmed with her other duties. Ms. Muller is handling her duties admirably, Alexander replied coolly. In the future, please consult with her regarding my schedule and events. Carter's face tightened with barely concealed resentment. Of course, sir, my apologies for the misunderstanding. After he left, Emma asked, what charity gala is he referring to? Annual fundraiser for tech education in underserved communities. Usually a tedious affair, but necessary for public relations. Alexander waved dismissively. You'll find the details in my files. It's 3 weeks from now. The rest of the day passed in a whirlwind of tasks. Emma discovered that Alexander worked at a relentless pace, his mind moving from one complex problem to another, without pause. Yet she matched him step for step, her quiet competence gradually earning something that, if not respect, at least approached acknowledgement. At 8 p.m., when most of the staff had retired for the evening, Emma was still at her desk outside Alexander's study, finalizing reports for his morning meetings. The house had grown quiet, the hallways dimmed to an ambient glow. You're still here. Carter's voice startled her. He leaned against the doorframe, his posture casual but his eyes cold. Work to finish, Emma replied simply, not looking up from her computer. You know, it's quite remarkable, Carter said, his voice dripping with false admiration. How Alexander has suddenly developed such compassion, taking a chance on someone like you. Emma saved her document before meeting his gaze. Is there something specific you need, Mr. Winters? Just friendly advice. He stepped closer. Alexander. Blake is not the humanitarian he's pretending to be. Whatever game he's playing by hiring you, it won't end well. He uses people until they're no longer useful, then discards them. Thank you for your concern, Emma replied evenly, but I'm quite capable of managing my professional relationships. Carter's facade cracked slightly. You have no idea what you're dealing with. This house, these people, we operate by certain rules. The natural order of things. You're disrupting that order. Perhaps it needed disrupting. His expression hardened. You won't last a month here, and when you fail, remember that I warned you. After Carter left, Emma sat back in her chair, considering his words. His hostility seemed disproportionate to her mere presence. Something deeper was at play, perhaps fear that she threatened his position or the influence he wielded over Alexander. She was still pondering this when Alexander emerged from his study, his tie loosened and jacket discarded hours ago. You should have gone to your quarters by now, he said, noticing her still at work. I wanted to finish the presentation for your investors' meeting tomorrow, Emma explained. I've added some comparative market analyses that I think strengthen your position. Alexander picked up the tablet she'd prepared and swiped through the slides, his brow furrowing. These projections aren't from our standard models. No, I developed a more nuanced algorithm based on the raw data. Your existing model doesn't account for seasonal fluctuations in consumer tech spending. He studied the numbers carefully. This is impressive work. Where did you learn financial modeling at this level? I have a background in statistical analysis. Before my accident, I worked briefly in market research. Emma kept her tone professional, avoiding the pity that usually accompanied discussions of her injury. Alexander looked at her with renewed interest. "Your accident?" Emma hesitated, then decided on honesty. "Car collision 5 years ago. A drunk driver. I was 27, working my way up the corporate ladder at a marketing firm in San Francisco." "And afterward?" "Afterward, I learned that accessibility is often a matter of perspective. Some doors closed, others opened." She smiled slightly. "Including yours, apparently." Alexander nodded slowly, something shifting in his expression. "Get some rest, Miss Muller. Tomorrow will be demanding." As Emma made her way back to her quarters, she passed the kitchen where the aroma of fresh baking drew her attention. The estate's chef, a middle-aged woman named Sophia, was removing a tray of pastries from the oven. "You're up late," Sophia observed, not unkindly. "Just finishing some work," Emma replied. "Those smell amazing." Sophia offered her a warm pastry. "Try it. It's an old family recipe, almond and raspberry." Emma took a bite and closed her eyes in appreciation. Perfect balance of sweet and tart. The almond paste is infused with vanilla. Sophia looked surprised. "You have a good palate. Are you a cook?" "Aspiring chef," Emma admitted. "Still learning." "Well, you're welcome in my kitchen any time," Sophia said warmly. "Most people here just eat the food. They don't really taste it." The simple kindness was unexpected after a day of subtle hostility from most of the staff. Emma chatted with Sophia for a few minutes, sharing her culinary ambitions and favorite techniques. It was the first genuine conversation she'd had since arriving at Lunar Estate. Later, as she prepared for bed, Emma caught sight of Alexander's study window from her room. He was still working, his solitary figure illuminated by the glow of his computer screen. Despite their different circumstances, she recognized a familiar dedication in his posture, the drive to prove oneself that came from a place of deep, perhaps wounded, determination. The next morning, Emma found a small package on her desk. Inside was an ergonomic cushion for her wheelchair, clearly custom-ordered overnight. There was no note, no acknowledgement, but the message was clear. Alexander Blake had noticed her discomfort during their long working hours and had, in his own distant way, attempted to address it. It was a small gesture, but it suggested something unexpected. Beneath the cold exterior and demanding presence, perhaps Alexander Blake was capable of seeing people as more than just tools to be utilized. The question was whether he would allow himself to see more of Emma than just her wheelchair, or if Carter was right about the temporary nature of Alexander's interest. As she positioned the cushion and prepared for another demanding day, Emma realized that Lunar Estate was becoming more than just a stepping stone toward her restaurant dreams. It was becoming a battlefield, not just for professional respect, but for something deeper, the recognition of inherent worth beyond physical limitations and social expectations. 2 weeks passed in a rhythm of intense work and subtle power struggles. Emma had quickly mastered Alexander's complex schedule, anticipating his needs with uncanny precision. The initial skepticism from the household staff had evolved into reluctant acknowledgement, all except for Carter, whose hostility had only intensified. Emma was in the library organizing research materials when Olivia rushed in, her usual composure shattered. "Ms. Muller, Mr. Blake is asking for you, urgently." Olivia's voice trembled slightly. "The Anderson Group presentation. Something's wrong with the files." Emma wheeled quickly toward Alexander's study, finding him pacing before 3 executives in expensive suits. The atmosphere was tense, the projected presentation on the wall showing corrupted data and missing slides. "Ms. Muller, explain why our presentation has been reduced to this embarrassment," Alexander demanded, his voice controlled but edged with fury. Emma assessed the situation, immediately accessing the backup system from the tablet she carried. "One moment, Mr. Blake." Her fingers moved swiftly across the screen, bypassing the corrupted files and retrieving the original presentation from the secure cloud storage she'd implemented as a contingency. "Gentlemen, I apologize for the technical difficulty," she said calmly, transferring the correct presentation to the main display. "As you can see, Blake Tech's proposal includes comprehensive integration of your existing systems with minimal disruption to daily operations. The executives relaxed visibly as the professional presentation materialized. Alexander's expression remained stern, but Emma caught the flash of relief in his eyes. The meeting proceeded smoothly, with Emma providing supporting data and clarification when needed. After the executives departed, Alexander turned to her, his expression unreadable. "How did you know to create a backup of that specific presentation?" Emma met his gaze evenly. "I didn't trust the system after finding several corrupted files last week. I've since been backing up all critical documents to a separate server." "Corrupted files?" Alexander's brow furrowed. "It hasn't reported any system issues." "It wasn't a system malfunction," Emma replied carefully. "The corruption patterns were too selective, too targeted." Understanding dawned in Alexander's eyes. "You believe someone deliberately sabotaged the files." "I have no proof," Emma acknowledged. "But yes, that's my suspicion." Alexander was silent for a long moment. "Thank you for your foresight, Ms. Muller. I'll have IT investigate the matter." That evening, Emma worked late in her office, reviewing contracts and preparing for Alexander's upcoming trip to New York. The mansion was quiet, most of the staff having retired for the night. When she finally headed back to her quarters, she took a detour through the gardens, needing a moment of fresh air after hours of concentration. The gardens of Lunar Estate were meticulously maintained, with geometric hedges and formal arrangements that reflected Alexander's preference for order and control. Yet in a secluded corner, Emma discovered something unexpected: a small informal herb garden bursting with basil, rosemary, and thyme. The chaotic abundance of it seemed at odds with the rest of the property. "Beautiful, isn't it?" The voice belonged to Alexander, who emerged from the shadows of a nearby arbor. "My mother planted this garden 20 years ago. It's the one part of the estate I haven't allowed to be redesigned." Emma was startled, both by his presence and the personal revelation. "It has character," she agreed. "Soul." Alexander approached, his usual formal demeanor softened by the evening light. "You've been with us for 2 weeks now, Miss Muller. Longer than Hugo predicted." "But not as long as I intend to stay," she countered with a slight smile. "Why are you here?" Alexander asked suddenly. "Really, you're clearly intelligent, capable. You could work anywhere." Emma considered her answer carefully. "The same reason you built Blake Tech instead of accepting a comfortable executive position elsewhere. To prove something." "To whom?" "To myself. And perhaps to people who see limitations before they see possibilities." Alexander studied her for a long moment. "You're not what I expected." "Few worthwhile things are exactly what we expect, Mr. Blake." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Alexander, please, after hours at least." "Then I'm Emma, not Miss Muller." They walked through the garden together, the conversation shifting to more personal territory. Emma learned that Alexander had built his tech empire from scratch after dropping out of MIT, driven by a vision that his professors had dismissed as impossible. He spoke of technical challenges and market battles, but carefully avoided any mention of family or relationships. In turn, Emma shared her journey from marketing executive to culinary student, describing how her accident had forced her to reevaluate her priorities and rediscover her passion for food. "Cooking is chemistry, physics, art and history all at once," she explained, her face animated in a way Alexander hadn't seen before. "It's transformative, taking raw ingredients and creating something entirely new that nourishes both body and soul." "You speak about food the way I speak about innovation," Alexander observed. "Both require vision and the courage to experiment," Emma replied. "And both can change people's lives in ways they don't expect." As they reached the end of the garden path, Alexander hesitated. "The charity gala is this weekend. I'd like you to attend, not as staff, but as my guest." The invitation caught Emma off guard. "Is that appropriate?" "Appropriate." Alexander raised an eyebrow. "I own the company, the foundation, and this house. I define what's appropriate." Emma smiled at his characteristic directness. "Then I accept. Thank you." The following morning, Emma found an elegant box on her desk containing an invitation, card that read, "Mr. Alexander Blake requests the pleasure of your company at the annual Blake Tech Foundation Gala." The formal gesture made the invitation unmistakably public and official. She had barely processed this development when Carter appeared in her doorway, his expression dark. "Playing a dangerous game, aren't you?" he said, his voice low and threatening. First the office near his study, now a gala invitation. "You're quite the ambitious little climber." Emma refused to be intimidated. "Is there something specific you need, Mr. Winters?" Carter stepped closer. "You need to understand something. Alexander Blake doesn't care about you. You're a novelty, a temporary distraction, maybe even a PR stunt. Once you've served your purpose, you'll be discarded like everyone else who gets too close." "Your concern is noted," Emma replied coolly. "It's not concern," Carter hissed. "It's a warning. I've been with Alexander for 8 years. I've seen your type come and go, the bleeding hearts who think they can fix him, make him human, but Alexander doesn't want to be fixed." After Carter left, Emma sat thinking about his words. There was something deeply personal in his animosity, something beyond professional jealousy. She wondered what history lay between Carter and Alexander that fueled such bitterness. The day of the gala arrived, bringing with it an unexpected challenge. Emma had planned to wear one of her few formal dresses, but when she returned to her room that afternoon, she found a stunning midnight blue gown laid out on her bed. A note in Alexander's distinctive handwriting read simply, "A suggestion, not an obligation." The gesture was thoughtful yet presumptuous, leaving Emma conflicted. The dress was beautiful and clearly expensive, but accepting it felt like surrendering some of her hard-won independence. After deliberation, she chose her own dress, a simpler but elegant black gown that she had purchased with her first paycheck from Blake Tech. It was her silent statement of self-determination. The ballroom of Luna Estate had been transformed for the occasion. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the space, while subtle technology integrations, holographic displays, and interactive donor recognition installations reminded guests of Blake Tech's innovative focus. Emma arrived independently, making her way through the gathering crowd of Silicon Valley elites and philanthropy regulars. She noticed the subtle reactions as she navigated the room, the momentary surprise, the quick recalibration of expectations, the occasional flash of discomfort from those unaccustomed to interacting with someone in a wheelchair at their social level. Alexander found her near one of the interactive displays that showcased the Foundation's educational initiatives. In his tailored tuxedo, he commanded attention without effort, his natural authority drawing deference from everyone around him. "You didn't wear the dress," he observed, his tone neutral. "I preferred my own," Emma replied simply, "but thank you for the thought." Something like respect flickered in his eyes. "You continue to surprise me, Emma." As they moved through the gala together, Emma noticed the subtle shift in how others perceived her. Standing beside Alexander Blake, she was suddenly visible in a different way, no longer defined primarily by her wheelchair, but recognized as someone whose company Alexander valued. The irony wasn't lost on her. The same people who might have dismissed her were now eagerly engaging, their attention secured not by her own merit, but by Alexander's apparent endorsement. During dinner, Emma found herself seated beside Eliza Thornton, Blake Tech's marketing director, and one of the few women in Alexander's executive circle. "I've heard impressive things about you," Eliza said, studying Emma with intelligent eyes. "Alexander doesn't usually bring personal guests to these functions." "I'm his assistant," Emma clarified. Eliza smiled knowingly. "Not tonight, you're not. Tonight you're seated at his right hand while the board members are 3 tables away. That's a statement, whether you realize it or not." Before Emma could respond, the evening's formalities began. Alexander took the podium to announce the Foundation's new initiative, a nationwide program to bring advanced tech education to students with disabilities. "Technology should remove barriers, not create them," he stated, his voice carrying authority across the silent room. Our foundation is committing $50 million to ensure that physical limitations never prevent brilliant minds from reaching their potential. The announcement received enthusiastic applause, but Emma felt a complex mix of emotions. The initiative was meaningful and necessary, yet she couldn't help wondering about the timing. Had her presence in Alexander's life influenced this particular focus? And if so, was it genuine evolution or calculated PR? As the evening progressed, Emma observed Alexander in his element, charming when necessary, commanding when required, but always slightly removed, as if a part of him remained inaccessible, even in a room full of people. The gala was nearing its conclusion when Emma overheard a conversation between Carter and Hugo in a quiet corner. "Getting out of hand," Carter was saying, his voice tense. "She's becoming a liability. If she starts digging into his past—" "Keep your voice down," Hugo warned. "She's smarter than we thought, more capable." "Which makes her more dangerous," Carter insisted. "The board is already asking questions about her role, and if she ever discovers what happened with Rebecca—" "That won't happen," Hugo interrupted firmly. "Alexander would never." They fell silent as they noticed Emma nearby. Carter's expression hardened into a mask of hostility, while Hugo managed a tight, artificial smile. "Enjoying the evening, Ms. Muller?" Hugo asked with forced pleasantness. "Very much," Emma replied, her mind racing with questions. Who was Rebecca? And what were they so afraid she might discover? Later, as the last guests departed, Emma found Alexander on the terrace overlooking the ocean. The formal facade he maintained in public had slipped slightly, revealing a weariness she recognized from their late working sessions. $50 million is an impressive commitment, she said, joining him at the railing. "Money is the easy part," Alexander replied, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon. "The hard part is changing perceptions, making people see beyond their comfortable assumptions." "Is that what you're trying to do?" Emma asked carefully. "Change perceptions?" Alexander turned to face her, his expression suddenly intense. "When I first hired you, it was an experiment. I wanted to know if someone in your situation could handle the demands of this position. And now? Now I know that was the wrong question entirely. The real question isn't what limitations you can overcome, but what possibilities you can show me that I've been too narrow-minded to see for myself." The admission hung between them, weighted with implications neither was ready to fully explore. In the moonlight, with the sounds of the gala fading behind them, they stood at the edge of something new and unfamiliar, a connection that transcended professional boundaries and challenged the carefully constructed walls Alexander had built around himself. "Who is Rebecca?" Emma asked quietly. Alexander's expression shuttered instantly, the openness vanishing as if it had never existed. "It's late. You should rest. Tomorrow we have the Singapore contracts to finalize." He walked away, leaving Emma alone on the terrace, with the distinct feeling that she had accidentally touched a wound far deeper than she realized, one that might explain not only Alexander's isolation, but also Carter's determined hostility. The days following the gala brought a subtle but palpable shift in the atmosphere at Lunar Estate. Alexander had become more distant, burying himself in work and reverting to terse professional interactions. Emma respected his withdrawal, maintaining her efficient performance while giving him the space he clearly needed. Meanwhile, Carter had escalated his campaign against her. Small sabotages began to multiply, her files mysteriously rearranged, appointments double-booked, and important emails delayed. Emma countered each attempt methodically, creating redundant systems and documenting every discrepancy. 3 days after the gala, Emma was preparing for Alexander's board meeting when Sophia, the chef, appeared at her office door. "You missed breakfast again," Sophia said, placing a covered tray on Emma's desk. "You can't survive on coffee alone." "Thank you," Emma smiled gratefully. "Time got away from me." Sophia lingered, her expression conflicted. "Be careful, Emma. The currents run deep in this house." "You mean Carter?" "Not just Carter." Sophia glanced toward the hallway, lowering her voice. "Rebecca Sullivan was Alexander's fiancée 5 years ago. She was also in a wheelchair, injured in the same accident that killed his younger brother." Emma felt her heart skip. What happened to her? She left suddenly. No explanation, no goodbyes. After that, Alexander changed, became the cold man you first met. Sophia straightened. I've said too much. Just watch yourself. After Sophia left, Emma sat motionless, processing this new information. Alexander's reaction to her question about Rebecca suddenly made sense, as did Carter's warnings. She wasn't the first woman in a wheelchair to enter Alexander's life. Was that why he had hired her? Some misguided attempt to recreate the past or atone for it? The thought was unsettling, casting her entire position at Luna Estate in a new light. Had her qualifications mattered at all, or was she merely a living reminder of someone Alexander had lost? Emma was still contemplating these questions when Alexander summoned her to his study. He was standing by the window, his back to the door, a posture she now recognized as his way of maintaining control when uncomfortable conversations loomed. The board has questions about the Foundation's new initiative, he said without preamble. They want to understand my sudden interest in accessibility technology. Emma moved to where he could see her. And what will you tell them? The truth, Alexander replied, finally turning to face her. That I've been forced to recognize my own blindness to certain realities. Because of me? Alexander's gaze was direct, challenging. Does that bother you, being influential? It bothers me if I'm influential for the wrong reasons, Emma countered. If I'm not here because of my abilities, but because I remind you of Rebecca Sullivan. The name landed like a physical blow. Alexander's expression hardened. Who told you about Rebecca? Does it matter? What matters is whether I'm here on my own merit or as some kind of surrogate for your past. Alexander paced, his controlled demeanor cracking slightly. You think I hired you because of Rebecca? That this is some psychological experiment? Isn't it? The timing of the Foundation's new focus, the charity gala, the dress, all of it has felt like some elaborate attempt to rewrite history. You know nothing about my history, Alexander said coldly. Then tell me, Emma challenged. Because until you do, I can't trust that my position here is based on my capabilities rather than your ghosts. For a moment, Emma thought he might order her to leave. Instead, Alexander moved to his desk and pressed a button that sealed the study doors. Rebecca and my brother Daniel were engaged, he began, his voice controlled but tight with suppressed emotion. The accident happened on their way to announce their engagement to our parents. A truck driver fell asleep at the wheel. Daniel was killed instantly. Rebecca survived but was paralyzed from the waist down. Emma listened quietly, recognizing the enormous effort it took for Alexander to share this. I was supposed to be with them that night, he continued, but I was too busy with Blake Tech's IPO preparation. I sent my driver instead, a decision that haunts me every day. Alexander's fist clenched. After the accident, I promised Rebecca I would take care of her. Not out of guilt, though God knows I felt that, but because she was family. What happened? Emma asked gently. I smothered her, Alexander admitted, the words carrying years of regret. I tried to solve her disability like it was a business. Problem, throwing money at specialists, experimental treatments, custom equipment. I never once asked what she actually wanted or needed. By the time I realized my mistake, she was gone. She left you. Alexander nodded. She left a letter saying she needed to rebuild her life on her own terms, not as an extension of my atonement. She was right, of course. I wasn't helping her, I was helping myself feel less guilty about surviving. The revelation hung between them, raw and honest. You're nothing like Rebecca, Alexander said after a long silence. Your resume caught my attention because of your qualifications, not your wheelchair. But I won't deny that working with you has forced me to confront my failures with her. Emma studied him, seeing beyond the powerful CEO to the man beneath, one who carried profound regrets beneath his carefully constructed facade. Thank you for telling me the truth, she said finally. It makes sense now, why Carter is so hostile. He was protecting you from repeating the past. Alexander's expression shifted to surprise. Carter? No, Emma. Carter isn't protecting me. Carter was in love with Rebecca, had been since college. When she left, he blamed me entirely. He's worked here all these years waiting for me to fail again so he could feel vindicated. The revelation cast Carter's behavior in an entirely new light. His warnings hadn't been about protecting Alexander. They had been about preventing Emma from becoming close to the man he blamed for losing someone he loved. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent knock. Hugo entered looking uncharacteristically flustered. "Sir, there's a situation in the kitchen. A small fire. It's contained, but—" "A fire?" Alexander was already moving toward the door. The three of them rushed to the kitchen where smoke billowed from one of the industrial ovens. Staff members were gathered around, Sophia directing the use of fire extinguishers while Carter stood back, filming the chaos on his phone with an expression that bordered on satisfaction. "What happened?" Alexander demanded. Sophia looked distraught. "I don't know, sir. The temperature controls malfunctioned. The oven reached over 500 degrees within minutes." Emma moved forward, examining the oven's digital display. "This isn't a malfunction. Someone manually overrode the safety protocols." She pointed to the small reset indicator flashing in the corner of the screen. All eyes turned to Carter, who was still recording. "Looking for someone to blame already?" he asked, his tone falsely innocent. "How convenient." Alexander's expression darkened. "Hugo, check the security cameras now." An hour later they gathered in Alexander's study. The security footage was conclusive. Carter had accessed the kitchen's control panel early that morning, deliberately tampering with the temperature limiters. "Why?" Alexander asked, his voice deadly quiet as he confronted Carter. "You could have hurt someone, destroyed the house." Carter's facade finally crumbled, years of resentment pouring out. "You destroyed Rebecca. You controlled her, isolated her, until she had no choice but to escape. And now you're doing it again." He gestured toward Emma. "Another vulnerable woman for you to save and manipulate." "I'm hardly vulnerable, Mr. Winters," Emma interjected firmly, "and nobody here is manipulating me." Carter laughed bitterly. "You think you know him. You've seen what he wants you to see. Ask him about the investigators he hired to track Rebecca after she left. Ask him about the restraining order she had to get to make him stop helping her." Alexander's face had gone pale. "That's enough, Carter." "No, it's not enough," Carter's voice rose. "I've watched you for 5 years, waiting for you to admit what you did. Instead, you buried yourself in work and money and power, and now you're trying to rewrite history with her." He pointed accusingly at Emma. "It's sick." Emma looked at Alexander, seeing the truth in his eyes. "Is that true? You tracked Rebecca after she left?" "I was trying to make sure she was safe, taken care of," Alexander admitted, quietly. "I couldn't accept that she didn't want my help." The silence that followed was deafening. Everything Emma had built at Lunar Estate suddenly felt like a house of cards, ready to collapse. "You're fired, Carter," Alexander said finally. "Clear out your things by morning." Carter smiled coldly. "Firing me won't erase what you did. It won't change who you are." After Hugo escorted Carter out, Emma and Alexander were left alone in the study, the weight of revelations hanging between them. "You should have told me everything from the beginning," Emma said quietly. "Would you have stayed if I had?" Alexander asked, his voice hollow. "I don't know," she answered honestly. "But it would have been my choice to make. That's what you never understood with Rebecca, and what you're still struggling to understand with me. It's not about the help you offer. It's about respecting the right to refuse it." Alexander moved to the window, his reflection in the glass revealing a man confronting his deepest failures. "I've spent 5 years trying to be better than the man who drove Rebecca away, building the foundation, funding medical research, creating technology to improve accessibility. But it was all just elaborate atonement, wasn't it? Not real change." Emma wheeled closer. "Real change starts with honesty, with yourself and others. What happened with Rebecca was wrong, but hiding from that truth doesn't honor her experience or help you grow beyond it." "And now?" Alexander turned to face her. "Where does this leave us?" It was the first time he had acknowledged that there was something between them beyond employer and employee, something complex and uncharted that had been growing despite all the complications. "That depends," Emma replied. "Are you ready to see me as Emma Muller, not as an echo of your past or a project for your redemption? Because I won't be either of those things." "I see you," Alexander said quietly, "more clearly than I've seen anyone in a very long time. But I've shown you the worst of me now, the controlling, obsessive man I'm trying not to be." Emma considered her next words carefully. "When I first came here, everyone saw my wheelchair before they saw me. Everyone except Sophia, who saw a fellow chef. And you, who saw something in me worth challenging, worth pushing beyond what was comfortable or easy. That matters to me. But so does honesty and respect." "I respect you more than you know," Alexander admitted. "Your resilience, your intelligence, your refusal to be defined by others' expectations, they've changed how I see the world. How I see myself." Emma made her decision. "I'd like to stay at Lunar Estate, Alexander, not as your assistant, but as a consultant for the Foundation's new initiative. My perspective could be valuable, not because I use a wheelchair, but because I understand the difference between help and condescension." Alexander looked surprised. "And your culinary dreams?" "The Foundation work would be part-time," Emma explained. "I've been offered an apprenticeship with Chef Laurent in San Francisco. It starts next month." "You've been planning to leave," Alexander realized. "I've been planning to move forward," Emma corrected gently, "just as you need to." In the weeks that followed, Lunar Estate underwent a transformation more profound than mere physical changes. Alexander restructured his household staff, promoting Sophia to head of household affairs and creating a more collaborative environment. The Foundation's new initiative gained momentum, with Emma's insights guiding its development toward truly empowering solutions rather than well-intended but paternalistic assistance. Emma's apprenticeship with Chef Laurent proved challenging but rewarding. 3 nights a week, she worked alongside one of the country's most celebrated culinary innovators, her unique perspective bringing fresh approaches to traditional techniques. The remaining days, she worked with Alexander's Foundation, her office, now located in the Blake Tech headquarters rather than the mansion, a healthy separation that allowed their relationship to evolve on equal footing. 6 months after the confrontation with Carter, Emma hosted a small dinner party in her new apartment in San Francisco. The guest list included Sophia, Olivia, and a few colleagues from the Foundation. Alexander arrived last, less formal than she had ever seen him, carrying a bottle of wine and a small wrapped package. The evening was filled with conversation and laughter. The hierarchies of Lunar Estate dissolved in the warmth of Emma's carefully prepared meal. As the other guests departed, Alexander lingered, helping Emma clear the table despite her protests. "You've created something wonderful here," he observed, looking around her apartment with its open-plan kitchen and wall of windows overlooking the bay. "It suits you." "Thank you," Emma smiled. "Chef, Laurent is already talking about backing my restaurant concept next year, something focused on accessible dining experiences, not just physically accessible, but culturally and economically too." "He'd be a fool not to invest," Alexander said, sincerely. "Your vision is extraordinary." He handed her the wrapped package. "This is for you, a housewarming gift." Emma unwrapped it carefully, revealing a small, elegantly bound book. Opening it, she found handwritten recipes, dozens of them from various cultures and traditions, each annotated with personal notes. "These were my mother's," Alexander explained. "She believed cooking was the most honest form of communication, that sharing food was sharing truth. I thought you might appreciate her philosophy." Emma touched the pages gently, understanding the significance of the gift. "Alexander, this is too precious. These should stay in your family." "They are," he said simply. The words hung between them, filled with meaning neither was quite ready to fully articulate. Emma's eyes met his, recognizing the man he was becoming, one who had faced his failures and was learning, however imperfectly, to move beyond them. "Thank you." As they stood together in her kitchen, the lights of San Francisco twinkling beyond the windows, Emma realized that their journey had never been about limitations or disabilities. It had been about transformation, the painful, beautiful process of breaking free from the past to create something new. Alexander's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining naturally. "I'm still learning," he admitted, "still making mistakes." "We all are," Emma replied with a smile. "That's how we grow." Outside, the California sun was setting, casting golden light across the bay. Within Emma's apartment, a different kind of light was growing, the quiet illumination of two people who had found in each other not completion or rescue, but recognition and possibility. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was something better, a beginning honest and real with all its complications and uncertainties intact. A story not about overcoming limitations, but about recognizing that true connection happens when we see beyond them to the humanity we share. The recipe book lay open between them, a bridge from past to future, much like the journey that had brought them to this moment, unexpected, challenging, and infinitely worth the effort. Dear listeners, we hope Emma and Alexander's journey of transformation has touched your hearts. For more emotionally rich stories that explore the complexities of human connection, we've created a special playlist you can find by clicking to your left. If you enjoyed this tale of breaking barriers and finding authentic understanding, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Every day we bring you unique narratives that delve into life's most meaningful challenges and triumphs. Don't miss our upcoming content. We're just getting started. We're eager to hear your thoughts in the comments section below.